Hello, my name is Joshua Keith, and this is theburningcoal.com, a website dedicated to God's glory, His grace, and our response to it. Today we're going to be doing a Monday motivation, and this week what I'd like us to focus on is speaking truth. In Ephesians, Paul is talking about how we are converted out of the world of darkness and into God's kingdom, how we are now made a part of God's inheritance. But with that comes obligations and expectations. And so, starting in chapter 4, Paul starts talking about the way that we should live. And I think it's interesting that one of the things he starts with is the idea of being honest with those around us. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25, it says, "Therefore, having put away falsehood, let each one of you speak the truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another." We see here that Paul emphasizes that we need to be honest. We need to put away falsehood. Now, if we're not careful, we may read through Ephesians chapter 4, see this verse, and just mentally check it off as if we're already doing it. But I think it's important for us to take time and truly meditate on this passage, because it's possible for this to sneak up on us. First of all, it's important for us to remember that honesty builds trust. The fact of the matter is that our society today does not always put a premium on honesty. First of all, we seem to be completely okay with the idea of what we call little lies or white lies. We seem to think that those things are not as bad as if you're truly being deceitful. Or maybe we're trying to be deceitful, but it's in their best interest. It would just hurt them if we were honest. And if we take it a step further, there's a lot of people in society today who think that being honest, if it gets in the way of taking care of you, then you really don't have to do it. Honesty is good in as far as it's not something that's going to be too big of an inconvenience for you. When that is so prevalent in our society, that can seep down to us, and we can lose track of being honest. And we might think that honesty isn't that important, but honesty is the foundation of trust. People need to know that when you say something, they can believe it. And if they can't, then that is going to be a distraction at least. And at worst, it's going to be something that keeps your relationship from ever being able to be functional. And so we need to have honesty in our life and not just take it for granted, just like our society may do. We need to know that being honest is important. And we need to examine our speech. Sometimes we may not even realize that this has become a habit. That there are certain situations where we feel it's okay to, quote unquote, bend the truth, even though it's really not. And so we need to take time this week as we're thinking about this idea of being honest and being truthful to those around us. To think about what we say. Don't let everything just be a reflex, because if you're not careful, you can find yourself lying out of habit. Again, maybe you're not even trying to hurt anybody. But we know that honesty is important. And that's why Paul talks about it. So it's worth taking the time to make sure that we are being honest. And a really big part of that is keeping your commitments. We might say that we're going to do something, and then we don't follow through. If we're not careful, we can keep justifying this behavior by constantly having, again, quote unquote, good reasons for why we are not keeping our commitments. When we do that, we are not keeping our word. We are not doing what we said we would do. And so that becomes a falsehood. We may have had no intention for that to be a falsehood, but it does become one. And so the trust that we're trying to build by speaking truthfully and honestly, well, that just goes right out the window. And so we need to take a look at ourselves, and we need to examine our speech and ask ourselves, am I somebody that other people can trust, that they can rely on? Or are they instead not even going to bother because I have shown myself to be somebody that they cannot trust? It's important for us to speak truth, and that's why Paul tells us to make sure that we do it. I hope this lesson helps you in your walk in his kingdom.